Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the XBE Thrive series, powered by the Diversity Consortium. Today, we're going to talk about managing the back of house support. So just a little bit of housekeeping as we get going. You're going to see that you have a controller bar somewhere on your screen. It might be on the top, it might be on the side. There's a couple features in there we'd like you to point out. Just one is there's a place for you to use the chat feature, and we're going to ask some questions during this. This is a bit interactive, and please go ahead and add your questions and comments that way. You could also make requests such as make sure that we get you a copy of the deck, or if you do ask any questions and you don't get your question live answered, then by all means, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're going to make sure that all the questions get answered and you'll get a copy of it. So with that said, the Diversity Consortium is about making a measurable difference in the supplier diversity landscape. That includes helping organizations identify and onboard and outreach and manage their XBE suppliers, and we're going to use that term XBE. And XBE is nothing more than an all-inclusive term for diverse, disadvantaged business enterprises. And we're also going to be able to provide services to those XBE organizations, some of which we're going to talk about today. So this is things like mentoring, coaching, training. It's also shared services. That's another way that we can help grow your business. It might also be through a health plan. It might also be through some financial capital support. So we have all sorts of ways that we can help organizations. And today we're going to talk about shared services. The way that the Diversity Consortium does this is through partners. So we are a consortium of the best partners. And as you can see, here's just a handful of representatives of the many partners that we work with. And today, joining us from Dobbins International and Diversity Works is Randall Dobbins. Hello, Randall.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
Doing outstanding. How about yourself?
So wonderful, I can't stand myself.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And can you tell us a little bit about what we're going to talk about today?
What we're going to talk about today, as you mentioned, is shared services. And with that, the actual agenda that we're going to cover includes precisely what is shared services, what does it mean to some of the challenges that you may be confronted with in your back of the house or back office functions. Those are synonymous terms we'll use throughout this presentation. Some of the trends that we're seeing for XBEs specifically, a few of the checklists and whatnot in terms of benchmarking against what some of their competitors are doing and what some of their customers are doing. Some of the outsourcing advantages and differentiating between outsourcing in general and shared services, and of course, what an engagement model might look like. So,
outstanding. Well, then let's go ahead and help me understand what exactly is a shared service. There you go. I'm glad you got this slide.
So the best way to think of shared services is as an XBE and as you're building your business, we tend to go about this in a traditional way, which is building your accounting function, building your finance function, building your HR team, building your IT team, building your marketing and advertising team. And as you get bigger and bigger, you can hire more people. Now, what happens with shared services is, what if you're actually able to find a group of providers that can handle all of those functions for you? They can bring to bear at a fractional cost and fractional use basis the full capabilities of those functions, as though you were 10 times larger than you currently are, and you got them on an as needed basis. So think of shared services really and truly, as the definition here says, if you were to, in a larger company, if you had all of those functions in each business unit, you would aggregate them up to the corporate level and have corporate provide that across the business units. And what we've seen going on in the market is that not only would you potentially roll that up to corporate and have corporate share all of those services to all the business units, but in some cases, we've seen companies actually provide a third party to actually do that. Because it turns out that these functions aren't necessarily core to what an oil company or a car company or a tech company would do. And so they found a third party who could do that for them, hence what's created what we now refer to as the shared services industry.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And I never thought about thinking about an XBE business like a corporation with that corporate office, so to speak. And that's a great way of thinking about it. So where do you see these kinds of shared services apply?
Well, as I mentioned, when you start looking at the types of functions, because you get into some really big questions around control, you get into issues around comfort, you get into issues around where your competitive advantage comes from. So when we start thinking about the general types of shared services between finance, HR, procurement, and IT, we're seeing a greater utilization of finance. Most of us as XBEs have seen this, fractional CFO models and folks that are coming in and say, I can be a part-time chief financial officer for you. I mean, you need more than the chief financial officer because somebody's got to do the bookkeeping, somebody's got to do the ledger work, somebody's got to do the treasury function, somebody's got to do the accrual work and forecasting and a whole host of other things other than just give you the strategy. But finance is the most commonly implemented one. But when you get into the larger organizations, they put all of these in a bucket. It's like if they've got $1 left to spend, rather than spend $20 on these finance, HR, procurement, IT, and two others, and the rest of the money on driving additional business, they're like, well, if I can not spend 20%, if I only have to spend 15%, and I can get a higher level of service, and I can take that additional 5% and pour it into the business and the growth. That's precisely what we see going on in the market. If I can get these plus two additional ones more robust, I get a lot more capabilities, and I can get them at a lower cost, then that makes more sense because me as the business owner, I'm no longer managing things that aren't necessarily I'm the best at, because preferably I'm better at operations. I know how to make better cars. I know how to make more green equipment. I know how to do all these other kinds of things. So if I can find somebody I can trust to do these things for me, it's the best of all possible worlds.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you so much. What I would like to do now is just, if you remember, I mentioned about being interactive. I'd like to understand a little bit about our audience. So this way, as we're, presenting to you and we're trying to make sure that we're conveying what shared services is all about, I'd like to understand what your biggest challenges are in terms of your back of house support. So if you can go ahead and find on your toolbar there, that chat feature, just go ahead in there and please go ahead and feel free to fill this out of what your greatest challenges are. And we're going to keep rolling. We're going to just keep collecting these answers, and then we're going to sort of combine that into the Q&A at the back end of this. So if that's okay, let's move on. And Randall, what do you got for us next?
Well, let's talk a little bit more about where do actually some of the resources reside, okay? And this is a study that came from Deloitte. Deloitte is actually a big player in this. They actually provide shared services capabilities for a number of the Fortune 500s, them, IBM Global Solutions, Accenture, a number of them really got big into this space. Another name for shared services amongst the Fortune 500 is business process outsourcing. And so what they are telling us here is, as you look at it, which one of these are functions that reside in the corporation versus a local business. And in the case of Deloitte, their global business solutions or their outsourced group. And you can see from 2019 to 2021, the movement. All right, the movement was a lot more substantial in terms of increasing, if you go left to right, increasing the utilization of a third party function as you went into 2021. And so you can see the big one was a lot of folks moved quite a bit of their payroll function. 80% of payroll was moved, 73% of customer service and contact centers or call centers, 67% of real estate and facilities management, 65% of information technology. Companies more or less thought that legal and sales and marketing were probably things they wanted to keep in-house. So you're not seeing as much movement in these two areas. As we move into 2021. As a matter of fact, you can see it was 35% decrease in sales and marketing. So people actually brought some of that back in. But that's what's going on in industry. And we see this trend. We agree with Deloitte on this. This trend is actually going to continue as we move forward. Now, there is one caveat. And for those of our XBEs that do professional services, there's a double-edged sword here. On the one hand, there's an opportunity, if you really and truly have expertise, for you to work with some of the primes or second tiers like the Deloittes and Accentures and whatnot, especially if you have a specialty, or if you find a company that's open to this, it creates opportunity for you. The other thing with the global pandemic and the supply chain disruptions, these third parties are having potential staff issues, and corporations may be looking at whether or not they need to insource this or find another provider because of customer service concerns. So for our professional services XBEs out there is a potential opportunity for you based on what we're seeing going on in the market right now. The Great Resignation, the staff shortages, the supply chain issues, the work from home issues, all of these other kinds of things can potentially create opportunity for you if you really and truly have a value proposition or a business model that can actually help some of the Fortune 500 pinpoint pain that they have in these areas.
You bring up a great point about the Great Resignation and the fact that it is so hard to find great talent today who's willing to come and do what needs to get done. So, how do I start this? Where should I start to look to figure out what do I do in-house versus what should I consider for a kind of a shared service?
Well, interestingly enough, in that same Deloitte 2021 Shared Services Survey, and great question, Rob, there was the question about what is it that companies should do in-house versus what is it they should get a provider to do. And this is pretty much consistent with the previous slide between looking at the payrolling and finance type activities all the way down to cyber, because you need to have a really, really good third-party company on your IT and cyber, and throw in blockchain and all these other types of things where you actually can begin to get more customer engagement, a tighter relationship with your customers, because you're eliminating third parties by implementing blockchain. And so IT, once again, is probably not outsourced that much and probably not given to a third party for shared services. But once again, you can see at the top of the list there, once again, these are things that people are very common, either putting in shared services or outsourcing. And as you go down the list, they want to keep closer to the vest. So if you are a service provider, what you want to take away from this sheet is, who is your target market? Where do they reside? As you go down this list, you're probably talking more to the corporate. As you go up this list, you're probably talking to who their current provider is or people in this space. Your sales cycle is probably going to be longer if you're talking to corporates for items at the top of this list than it is for the items at the bottom of this list.
That makes perfect sense. Great. So once I start this process, then what?
Well, you have to get into what we call managing the expectations. And what we're getting into here, once again, is an issue of how well do you understand your Fortune 500 company. The Diversity Consortium, when you really think about what it does, is it is perhaps one of the best vehicles to help small businesses learn how to sell to big businesses, because big businesses have a specific way they go to market, and big business selling to big business is very easy because they have a similar way that they go to market. For small business, there's a lot of, well, okay, what's all involved? How does this work? Why am I not taken seriously? Why does it seem to take forever for me to get a decision made? A whole host of things. And what we're getting into is, first, do you understand what the expectations are? And then how are you managing them? So when you look at this, the Deloitte survey came back and said, with regard to what the overall aspirations and goals are for their Fortune 500 shared services customers, what is the voice that their customers are hearing from the final customer? All right, what is Ford hearing from the car buyer? And when you start looking at shared services, or in this case specifically, as we say on this chart, what steps is your organization currently taking to drive a better customer experience? And in the context of how is shared service supporting that? Um, Internally, how are my shared services organizations aligned to meeting the service level goals I want to provide to my customers? If I want zero defects in my vehicles that I sell to the car buyer, then what is the role of shared services to support that? If it's a huge goal, I'll invest in it. If it's not a huge role, then I won't invest in it. So how important is that? What is the increased visibility of shared services to the business? How do I jointly manage meetings? Or in this case, you want to think of meetings as, how do I jointly manage um, SLA, service level agreements, and who all needs to be involved in that from a cross-functional or cross-discipline or multi-business unit perspective? And then what additional investments do I need to make in the infrastructure? And in this case, is it something that should be made by the shared services company and I can amortize, or is it something I need to take on directly to make it easier for me to facilitate the shared services provider taking on more responsibility? Where does leadership need to fall into place to make sure that we're getting maximum utilization out of the shared services function? And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, with some of the cross-functional teams, the process level councils and customer focus groups. But when you understand that you as the XBE understand that this is what's going on in the customer organization, then you should be able to have a good conversation about whether or not the product and service you offer supports whatever expectation within each of these 7 different segments that the customer is trying to address, how you can help them with that, how you can support them with that, and how you can actually help them to get more value out of their shared services relationship, how to get increased value out of what they decide they're going to bring in and do themselves, and how you can actually help them drive the innovation and improve cost performance that they're looking for.
Oh, that's great. And so many of the listeners today have built their business up themselves, and I'm sure are asking themselves the question, well, how do I know I can trust somebody else to help run my business, right? I mean, we built this thing from the ground up, and we care so much about the quality that's in there. What are the kind of expectations around quality? What the objectives? How do I know that we're really going to get out what I think we're going to get out?
Great question, Rob. And I want to just take a quick pause right now, because we've spent a decent amount of time reviewing the Deloitte survey. And I don't want our XBEs to go, yeah, Randall and Rob, that's great. We understand for the big boys, they got a lot more money than we do. And, this is great information, but I don't know how this applies to my business. And what I want to share with you is 2 things. Number one, this precisely applies to your business. If you are not currently thinking about your business in this way, then you are escaping one of the largest competitive advantages that you can set up in your business right now. And when I talk about a competitive advantage, what I mean is you can actually start getting world-class back of house function at fractional cost. You do not have to build organizations of 25 and 50 and 100 people to handle activity that doesn't drive additional revenue into the business. And that's what this whole shared services thing is about. How do I get professionally managed back office at a lower investment that creates the capability for me to scale up more quickly than if I were making that investment directly, and then I had to bring in the 75,000, 150,000, $200,000 talent plus sign-on bonus in the current market, plus healthcare costs. I have to create a career ladder for them if I bring them in internally. And then I have to give them staff, and I have to invest in computer systems and other things just for them to do their job. Wow, what if there was someone that I could hire that had all of that in place for me right now, and I just bought it as I needed it? Okay, so when we start looking at this, it gets precisely to your question, Rob. What should our XBEs be thinking about in terms of objectives identified and achieved? And here we go. Can you get standardization and efficiency across your entire operation? You need to, because we all know how many times something is broken in our organization because shipping didn't know what was going on in warehousing, didn't know what was going on in inside sales, didn't know what was going on in out in the warehouse, and it turns out we had no standardization in our processes. Cost reduction, I just mentioned to you, if you can get a higher level of service at fractional costs, that saves you money. I mean, we all know people drive expenses in your business. The more people you hire, the more it costs to operate your business. And you're lucky if you can get 60 to 70% productivity out of your staff. So then you try and find other things for them to do, which they may or may not be great at. But you're like, I'm paying you this much money. I'm going to get 8 hours worth of work out of you in a day, or I'm going to get 40 hours out of the week. So you start finding things to do because you see them sitting there not doing anything. You go, this just doesn't work for me. And so you have the opportunity to reduce costs. Now you can actually focus more on driving business value directly because all your resources are really focused on the single most important thing in your business, driving additional value for your customers. Your ability to take advantage of what we call digital agenda acceleration, which is as we are deploying more technology to get more done with less, you can actually focus on that because you don't have resources trying to go in all kinds of different directions. You can pick a handful of ones that are key to driving the results you're looking for in your business. You can start looking at additional capabilities that you want to drive, and your overall business strategy and plans are objectives that you can zero in, primarily because you have more bandwidth to do this. And that's one of the things that in Deloitte's survey, they realized was a huge advantage for the Fortune 500. And for your business, this exact same opportunity exists as we speak.
Wow. Well, I think you've got me sold here. I understand about it, and I think this makes just perfect sense. So talk to me about how do I implement? Where do I see this? How do I start to see success?
All right, on the last of the Deloitte slides, and once again, we would have come up with other slides, but it's like it doesn't make sense for us to come up to reinvent the wheel if there's somebody that had good information that tells the story, and this Deloitte slide does tell the story. But it's one of those things that there are 5 things you want to make sure you want to consider in order for this to be successful. First and foremost, you want to know what your reporting capabilities are. And that goes back to the question you asked earlier, Rob, which is, when your larger customers are asking you for different types of reports and you're unable to provide those, then with your shared services, you should be able to do 2 things from reporting. First, identify the analytics you need to run your business, and then understand the reporting capabilities you need to provide to your customers. All right, that's the first and foremost that what you want to make sure you have in place when you start looking at this. And then you want to think through, okay, all right, how do I actually configure shared services in order to drive a better customer experience? Where do I need to put more effort on marketing and sales and marketing? Do I need to put more effort on finance in terms of cash flow management so that I can create the opportunity to make sure that resources are in place for a better customer experience? Do I need to work on HR in terms of making sure I got good people coming on, and what is the overall benefits package that I need for them? From a facilities perspective, do I have locations properly placed in order to better serve my customers, or is my current operation large enough? And actually, am I using the building properly? Am I paying too much for my current facilities? And it's actually beginning to affect what's going on with my customers, those kinds of things. So you want to focus on what does it take to have a better customer experience. And then an interesting aspect of shared services is this robotic programming automation. And we're getting to a point because a lot of shared services or back office activities are rules based. There's new technology that's coming into play that actually allows you to automate some of the activities for lower costs. So a good shared services company can do that for you, which once again allows you to deliver a better customer experience, enhances your reporting capabilities, and allows you to drive greater profitability and well, just greater profitability and operating efficiency. And you obviously want to incorporate flexibility and well-being practices in for your talent. If we didn't learn anything from the pandemic, it was we definitely have to have a flexible business model that allows us to do things when it's unexpected. With what's going on globally, with some of the unrest, with what's going on with the strains in the supply chain, which, you know, those of us that have been at this for a while, that happens on a cycle. All right, we go through this on a cycle. So you definitely want to make sure you have the flexibility built in. And as I just mentioned with the remote workforce, you want to make sure your delivery models to be more remote and virtual so that you can tap into these from wherever your people may need to be. All right. So, and what this is specifically getting at was it used to be the shared services models were people had infrastructure they had back office or back of house infrastructure at the local plant. They had it at the corporate headquarters. They had regional offices that handled these types of functions. Now with cloud-based services and a whole host of other things, you want to be able to deploy and access these resources to give you access to them remotely and deploy them virtually to once again support your flexibility. Okay, so that's another thing you want to make sure you look at, that you have that kind of support, as opposed to, you know, doing all of this in your building, but you know, having it be under the shingle or under the title of another company.
That makes perfect sense, Randall. Thank you so much. And you know, now I understand as I look across the service lines that the Diversity Consortium offers, it just makes sense that, you know, businesses might be looking for finance and accounting or marketing, IT and HR, but it's beyond that. It's even facilities and risk management and compliance, all these kinds of things that it just makes sense to have a fractional expert on staff as opposed to a full-time person, from a cost perspective, or even from the fact that they may not have the experience and the breadth of the individual that I need to cherry pick in order to help me be successful.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, that's a great summary, Randall. Thank you so much. Why don't we take a few questions? So again, I mentioned this is going to be a bit interactive. So on your screen there, if you see the chat window, please go ahead and type in your questions. And we've got a gentleman running the production for us. His name is Adam. Hello, Adam.
Hey, Rob. Hey, Randall.
So Adam, can you read off a couple of the questions? So let's start with the first one you got.
Yeah, no problem. So these questions are coming, as you mentioned earlier, the challenges you asked about the challenges that some of our attendees are facing currently. So they did have some questions attached to them as well, as well as mentioning those challenges and answering that question. So first one, my customers keep asking about my financial reporting methods. Would a shared services CFO be able to assist?
Absolutely, absolutely. And once again, it's the shared services financial services where the CFO you can get. I mean, if you only need 20 hours of a CFO, then you get 20 hours of a CFO. But what shared services does for you, you get the 20 hours of that CFO, and that CFO has a huge financial toolkit or back offices available to them to support you in those 20 hours. So not only do you get the individual, you get the individual and everything that they need to be successful in their job in order for them to provide to you what your corporate customers are looking for or what you may be looking for to run your business. Now, I do want to come back to something because I don't think we spent enough time on it earlier, and I think this is a good place to interject this. One of the major limitations of small businesses doing business with the Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 is this concept of scalability. And the issue is your ability to financial report is an indicator around how sophisticated your business is, or in this case, sophistication translating to how scalable your business is. If they ask this of one of your larger competitors, they send it over. They decode precisely what they're asking for. They send it over. Shoot, they probably have an SAP system as well, or SAP with Salesforce or some type of front end on it using Business Warehouse or using some analytics package, and they can do that. And so with you not necessarily having made those investments, shared services gives you access to all of that depending on who your shared services provider is without having had to have made that investment. And that closes that perceived gap that you can't handle their business because you finessed a simple thing like being able to provide a quality financial report to them.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Excellent. Adam, next question, please.
Sure. Next question is, my biggest challenge is the continual need to add FTEs. How will this help?
Oh, great question. And if you think about it, most of us, we're very savvy. We do have a lot of technology available to us. That's one of the advantages of being XBEs and being small business owners. We are innovative out of necessity. More often than not, we have more challenges than resources, so we have to become innovative. And shared services just fits with that model, with that concept. The idea being that if you had a choice between hiring another salesperson, or if you had the choice of hiring another worker on the factory floor, is that a better resource for you than another accounting person or HR person or IT person? So if you could just buy a bundle of HR, finance, legal, accounting, real estate, if you said, all in, I only needed 100 hours of that per month, if I only needed 200 hours a month of that, as opposed to, what is it? Let's just do easy math. 5 people, 1 person for each function, and I know it's 163 hours per month per person, but let's just make it easy, 200 hours per month, because they're probably going to end up working overtime. That's 1,000 hours that you have to pay for internally for 5 people to do those various functions for a full month. But let's just say you only needed, 300 hours or 400 hours. Well, right there, you just saved 2 or 3 FTEs right off the bat.
I love that math. I absolutely love that math, and saving money is really important to businesses, especially as they're looking at every dollar and trying to make it count. Adam, tell me about the next question, please.
Yep. I often don't have time to build my business and represent it at the same time. How could shared services help?
Exactly the same thing, just to pick up on the previous question. So imagine not only if you didn't have to hire the 2 or 3 FTEs, or you could defer bringing on those 2 or 3 FTEs until after you've generated sufficient revenue and cash flow to bring them into the business with grace and ease. Then imagine that you had the ability to meet for 15 minutes in the morning, or 1 hour per week, or 4 hours of the course of the month with your shared services provider, to make sure that all of your back office functions were working as expected, that what you had contracted for is being delivered, everything's working fine. During these meetings, you get an exception report where you're looking at things that aren't quite working as expected, and you put together the plan to address it. And then your shared services provider goes off and works on that, while for the rest of the time, you are focused on growing the business. You're calling on customers, you're responding to RFPs, you're managing the pipeline, you're building out operations to make sure that you can handle the business and addressing the associated customer issues. You are not spending a lot of time in accounting trying to track down debits and credits. You are not fighting with HR about a whole host of different things that we always fight with HR about. Okay. And you're not fighting with the landlord and all these other kinds of things, because you have professionals that manage and handle that for you. It frees you up to do quite a bit of things that actually determine more of the success of your business.
And that's what we all need, no doubt. So it looks like we've got time for just one last question. And then I do see that there's a whole bunch more. And again, we're going to get answers to all your questions, and we'll send it out to you via email. So just by the fact that you registered, we've got your email address, and you'll get a copy of this recording, as well as the all the answers to all the questions. So Adam, can you just give us one last question, and then we're going to move on?
Sure. How is this different than hiring a contractor to perform a function?
Great question. We do know a number of people that have come up with a similar version of what they thought of shared services by avoiding the cost of FTEs and using contractors. The issue that you run into using the contractors is that oftentimes contractors don't come with the full suite of services that they need to be successful. They take a virtual HR manager. A virtual HR manager may not have a full team of people to do recruiting for you, and who can go through and pre-screen applications in order to only submit to you the ones that you may want to go, yes or no to. A contractor may not have access to an IT infrastructure, or what we call an HR information system, HRIS, that actually monitors and tracks everything that you need done. The contractor may not have a background check capability. That may be something that you'd have to have the contractor plus another provider for. And so when you start looking at all the tools that whoever your lead is, and the 6 functions that we represented, all the tools they need to do their work, there's a high probability that the contractor doesn't have that level of investment. So that's the difference between hiring a contractor versus hiring a firm that is competent in these activities to do that. And that is where the differentiation comes in when we talk about having the scalability for your business to support a multi-million, multi-year contract with a Fortune 1000 customer. For that contractor to be able to ramp up, you have the same issues as you do trying to ramp up with your internal staff. But if you have a company doing this for you, they already have the bandwidth and the investment and everything in place. And it's kind of like, you know, telling Walmart rather than wanting 10 of one item, you want 1,000 of them. Walmart could probably do that for you.
Thank you so much, Randall, for your time and for your expertise, and greatly appreciated. And thank you all for the listeners. I know your time is very valuable, and I hope you found today helpful. Today was just one of the many XBE Thrives that we offer. As you can see, our next Thrive is coming up in May. We're going to talk about positioning for the Fortune 1000 success, which is really helping your business align. And that's coming up on May 26th at 3 p.m. And just to give you a little additional insights, we also do these things that we call micros. And these micros are a little bit of a deeper dive into specific subjects. And you'll find all these on our website. So please feel free to go ahead and check out the Diversity Consortium, our website. And with that, I would like to thank you again. And you can see right here, there is our website address, thediversityconsortium.com. I am Rob Travia with my contact information right there. And on behalf of myself and Randall Dobbins, you can see his information there. If you got any additional questions or would like to reach out, please feel free to do so. Thank you all, and I wish you all a safe and wonderful afternoon. Goodbye now.